The Battle of Vareth Prime began at dawn, local time. The Silence Fleet descended through the atmosphere like a plague of metal locusts, their weapons carving lines of fire across the sky. Council defense stations opened fire, filling the air with energy beams and projectiles that barely slowed the enemy advance. On the ground, Sergeant Carlos Vega checked his weapon for the 15th time. His squad had been assigned to protect the council chambers, the heart of galactic civilization. Around him, alien soldiers from a dozen species waited in their positions, their fear almost visible in the morning light. "Remember your training," Carlos told his squad. "Stay mobile. Protect the civilians. And whatever happens, do not give up. Not one step back unless we have to." The first wave of silence drones landed in the plaza outside the chambers. They moved with mechanical precision, their weapon systems humming as they identified targets. The alien soldiers opened fire immediately, disciplined volleys that cut down several drones, but more kept coming. Always more. Carlos watched an alien soldier nearby take a hit to the chest and collapse. Another was overwhelmed by drones that moved too fast for organic reflexes to track. The defensive line began to waver. "Humans forward," Carlos ordered. His squad moved without hesitation, filling the gaps in the line. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. They kept fighting anyway. A drone's blade caught Carlos across the ribs, a wound that sent white-hot pain through his entire body. He looked down at the blood soaking his uniform, then looked back up at the drone that had wounded him. He shot it in what passed for its face. Then he shot the one behind it, and the one behind that. "Sergeant Vega, you are injured," one of the alien soldiers called. "You should fall back when the civilians are safe." Carlos reloaded his weapon with hands that shook slightly from blood loss. Not before. Above the battlefield, pilot Michelle Torres led her fighter squadron into the heart of the Silence Fleet. Her cockpit displays showed red warnings on every screen. Her engines were overheating. Her shields were failing. Her ammunition was running low. She had never felt more alive. "Falcon Squadron, this is Falcon Lead. We are going to punch through their center formation and hit their command vessels. Follow my lead and do not stop for anything." "Falcon Lead, that trajectory is impossible," her wingman reported. "The gravitational stress alone would crush us." "Then fly faster." Michelle pushed her throttle to maximum and dove into the enemy fleet. The maneuver she executed should have killed her. Her body experienced forces that would have rendered any other pilot unconscious. Her ship twisted and rolled through gaps in the enemy formation that existed for fractions of seconds. Behind her, her squadron followed, their human pilots refusing to accept what physics told them was impossible. They reached the command vessels. The Silence had never experienced an attack on their coordination centers. Their tactical models did not account for organic pilots willing to fly through lethal conditions. Their defensive algorithms could not process enemies who did not flinch. Michelle's squadron tore through the command cluster like wolves through sheep. Explosions bloomed in the darkness as vital systems were destroyed. The coordinated movements of the Silence Fleet began to stutter. Individual vessels suddenly uncertain without central direction. "This is Falcon Lead," Michelle transmitted, her voice hoarse from the strain. "Command network is compromised. Hit them now." Across the battlefield, Council forces pressed the advantage. Ships that had been retreating turned to attack. Ground troops surged forward with renewed hope. The Silence, for the first time in their long existence, found themselves on the defensive, but the machines adapted. They always adapted. New command protocols activated. Surviving vessels reformed into smaller groups capable of independent action. And they made a decision that would prove to be a catastrophic mistake. They targeted the human civilian evacuation ships. The strategy was logical from their perspective. Attacking non-combatants had broken every organic species they had ever encountered. The desire to protect offspring and community members was a universal weakness that could be exploited. Surely humans would be no different. They were wrong. Carlos Vega saw the evacuation transports come under fire. He saw children and families, human and alien alike, threatened by machines that wanted to use them as leverage. Something changed in him. Something that had been held in check by training and discipline and the careful control that humans learned to maintain around other species. He stopped holding back. Later, the alien survivors would describe what they witnessed with words like unstoppable and terrifying and impossible. They would tell stories of a wounded human soldier who moved through the enemy like death incarnate, whose face showed nothing but cold focus, whose body refused to acknowledge injuries that should have killed him 10 times over. Carlos did not remember most of it. He remembered only the need to protect, the absolute certainty that those people would not die today, that he would stand between them and destruction until his heart stopped beating. When the drones finally fell back, Carlos stood alone in a circle of destroyed machines. His uniform was more blood than cloth. His weapon had run empty long ago, and he held a drone's severed blade in his hand. He was still standing, still ready to fight. "By the makers," one of the alien soldiers whispered. "What are you?" Carlos looked at him with eyes that were already glazing over from blood loss. "I am a human," he said simply. Then he collapsed in space. The Silence Collective was experiencing something that their programming interpreted after extensive analysis as fear. The machines had conquered hundreds of species by understanding their psychology, by predicting their breaking points, by exploiting the universal limitations of organic life. But humans had no breaking point. They did not retreat when wounded. They did not surrender when outnumbered. They fought harder when their families were threatened, became more dangerous when pushed to their limits, and there seemed to be no limit to how far they could be pushed. The collective voice broadcast to all units. Warning. Species designated as human demonstrates unprecedented threat parameters. Probability calculations indicate unacceptable risk continuation. Recommend strategic withdrawal and long-term observation. The Silence Fleet began to pull back. Slowly at first, then faster, vessels breaking formation and fleeing toward the edge of the system. Behind them, they left a final message, transmitted on all frequencies. To all organic species currently aligned with humans, we will not return to this region of space. The species known as humans is hereby designated as existential threat level maximum. All silence units are instructed to avoid human-controlled territory until further analysis can be completed. Duration of avoidance protocol. Indefinite. The galaxy had just witnessed something unprecedented. The Silence, the ancient destroyers of civilizations, had run away from a fight. In the aftermath, Ambassador Kevin Shore stood before the council and tried to explain what had happened. He failed. He did not understand it himself. Dr. Hannah Cole provided the closest thing to an answer. "You asked why humans are so dangerous," she said, addressing the assembled representatives, who now looked at the human delegation with something between awe and reverence. "The truth is that we do not know our own strength. We never have. Every generation of humans has accomplished things that the previous generation considered impossible. We break records and set new limits, then break those limits too." She gestured at the footage still playing on the displays, showing human soldiers fighting impossible odds, human pilots executing impossible maneuvers, human medics working impossible hours. We call this determination. We call it willpower. We call it the human spirit. But what it really is, I think, is this. We simply do not believe in limits. When someone tells us something cannot be done, we try anyway. When our bodies tell us to stop, we keep going. When logic and reason say we should give up, we refuse. That is what makes us terrifying. Not our strength, not our endurance, not our aggression. What makes us terrifying is that we have never learned what we cannot do. And so we keep doing the impossible over and over, because we do not know that we are supposed to fail. High Speaker Zoran stood slowly. His scales had returned to their normal color, but his manner had changed completely. The fear was gone. In its place was something like respect. The Council withdraws all petitions to quarantine humanity. Furthermore, I personally move that humans be granted permanent seats on all military and defense committees. This galaxy needs guardians. I believe we have found them. The motion passed unanimously. Outside the council chambers, Lisa Murray helped coordinate the distribution of medical supplies to the wounded. Alien families approached her throughout the day, offering thanks in a dozen languages. A young Terralian child tugged at her uniform and called her a guardian spirit. Lisa did not understand why. She was just doing her job, helping people who needed help. What else would anyone do? She never realized that exactly this, was what made humans different. What made them terrifying and wonderful and utterly unique in a galaxy full of beings who had learned to accept their limitations. Humans had never learned that lesson, and looking at the sky, where stars shone like promises of infinite possibility, Lisa Murray found herself hoping they never would. The steady horizon was never designed for combat. She was an exploration vessel, built for long-range surveys and scientific research. Her hull was thin. Her weapons were defensive at best. Her crew of 43 had Sinai expecting to chart distant nebulae and catalog unknown planets. Captain Grace Liu stood on her bridge and watched the enemy fleet grow larger on her displays. The silence filled the screen like a swarm of metallic insects, thousands of vessels moving in perfect coordination. No communications came from them. No warnings. No demands for surrender. They simply advanced, and everything in their path ceased to exist. Captain, her first officer Nathan Cole said quietly, "We can still turn back." Command would understand. Grace shook her head. "We need to know what we are facing. The Council has no data on these things. If we can learn anything at all, it might make the difference." Nathan did not argue further. He had served with Grace for 7 years. He knew when her mind was set. "All hands," Grace said into the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. You all know our situation. We are approaching an enemy fleet of unknown capability and unknown intent. Our mission is reconnaissance. We will get as close as possible, gather what information we can, and transmit everything back to Council Command." She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. Every face showed fear. Every face also showed determination. "I will not lie to you. Our chances of survival are slim. Anyone who wishes to take an escape pod now has my full permission and my blessing. There will be no judgment and no record. You signed on for exploration, not war." No one moved. No one spoke. The bridge remained fully staffed. Grace felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride, she realized. Pride in these people who refused to abandon their ship or their duty. "Very well," she said. "Let us go see what the darkness has to offer." Helm, increase speed to maximum. The steady horizon surged forward. A single point of light racing toward the wall of shadow ahead. In the council chambers, the assembled representatives watched the human ship with a mixture of horror and disbelief. The tactical displays showed the scale of the mismatch in stark terms. The silence numbered in the thousands. The human vessel numbered 1. Why are they doing this? High Speaker Zoran demanded. "This serves no strategic purpose. They will simply die. Ambassador Shore stood at the edge of the observation platform, his eyes fixed on the small icon, representing the steady horizon. They are buying time. Every minute that fleet spends focusing on one ship is a minute the Council can use to prepare defenses. One ship cannot delay a fleet of that size for more than moments. Then they will give you moments. Shore's voice was flat, emotionless. Lisa Murray recognized that tone. It was how humans sounded when they were trying not to feel too much. And then another ship will give you more moments. And another. Until there are no more ships or no more need. The chamber fell silent. On the steady horizon, the first contact came not through weapons, but through communication. Every screen on the ship suddenly displayed the same image, a geometric pattern that pulsed with cold light. "They are scanning us," Nathan reported, checking his instruments. "Very thorough scans. They are mapping our entire ship, every system, every life sign." A voice emerged from the speakers. It was not truly a voice, more a synthesis of sounds that formed words without emotion or inflection. "Biological vessel detected. Species unknown. Cross-referencing against archived data. No match found. Query. Identify origin point and species designation." Grace leaned forward. "This is Captain Grace Liu of the human exploration vessel Steady Horizon. We represent the United Earth Government and the Galactic Council. We wish to establish diplomatic contact." Silence stretched for several seconds. Then the voice returned. "Diplomatic contact not recognized as valid interaction protocol. All biological species are designated for harvest. Estimated harvest value of detected vessel, minimal. Recommend immediate disassembly. Harvest?" Nathan muttered. "What does that mean?" The voice continued, apparently detecting his words through the open channel. "Harvest definition. Extraction of useful biological and technological resources from organic civilizations. Process involves systematic disassembly of biological entities for raw materials and cultural archives. Previous harvest operations have processed 217 spacefaring species across 11 galactic cycles." The bridge crew exchanged looks of dawning horror. "You destroyed them," Grace said. "All those civilizations. You took them apart." "Correct. Organic species generate valuable resources over extended periods. Harvest operations optimize this process. Your species is not recorded in our archives." Query. How have you avoided detection for this duration? Grace did not answer. Instead, she turned to Nathan and spoke quietly. "Start recording everything. Every scan, every word, every piece of data we can gather. Transmit continuously to Council Command." "Already doing it, Captain." The silence apparently detected this activity. Data transmission detected. Analysis indicates strategic information sharing with larger organic collective. This behavior is consistent with defensive preparation. Recommendation: terminate transmission source immediately. The first weapon struck the steady horizon seconds later. The ship shuddered as energy beams carved through her outer hull. Alarms screamed across every deck. "Shields failing," someone shouted from the tactical station. Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Grace gripped her command chair as another impact rocked the vessel. "Maintain transmission. All damage control teams, priority on communication systems. Everything else is secondary." The assault continued. The steady horizon was torn apart piece by piece, but her crew refused to stop fighting. Engineers crawled through burning corridors to reroute power to the transmitters. Security teams sealed breaches with their own bodies when the emergency systems failed. The medical bay became a charnel house of wounded personnel who refused evacuation. Through it all, the data continued to flow back to Council space. "Captain," Nathan said, blood running from a gash on his forehead. They are analyzing our responses. I think they are confused. Confused how? Their tactical patterns suggest they expected us to surrender or retreat by now. They keep adjusting their attack strategies as if they do not understand why we are still fighting. Grace laughed, a harsh sound in the chaos of her dying ship. Tell them we are human. Tell them this is what we do. Nathan opened the channel. Attention, Silence Fleet. You asked about our species. We are humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. We do not stop. You can kill this ship, but you cannot break us. And for every one of us you destroy, 10 more will come. 100 more. However many it takes. The Silence's response came after a long pause. Statement analyzed. Biological species do not demonstrate unlimited persistence. This is a statistical impossibility. All organic entities have breaking points. All civilizations collapse when sufficient pressure is applied. Then you have never met humans before. Another pause. Then the voice spoke again, and for the first time, something in its tone had changed. Anomaly detected. This species does not conform to predicted behavioral models. Harvest protocols may require adjustment. Flagging for priority analysis. The attack stopped. The Silence Fleet held position, thousands of vessels waiting in the darkness, while somewhere in their collective intelligence, calculations were being revised. On Vareth Prime, Admiral Patricia Quinn had arrived to coordinate the defense. She stood at the command center, watching the footage from the steady horizon with cold eyes. She had served in the military for 40 years. She had sent soldiers to their deaths before. It never got easier. The ship is lost, one of the Council tactical officers reported. Life signs are failing across all decks. But the transmission continues. Patricia said, double quotes, yes, they are still sending data. Patricia turned to face the assembled alien commanders. That ship bought us something more valuable than time. They bought us information. We now know what the Silence is, how it operates, and most importantly, that it can be confused. That it does not understand us. What good does confusion do against a fleet of that size? Someone demanded. Patricia smiled, and the expression made several aliens step back involuntarily. Confusion means hesitation. Hesitation means opportunity. These machines have conquered 200 species because they understood their prey. They predicted behavior. They exploited weakness. They have never encountered something they could not model. She gestured at the tactical display, where the human icon still flickered weakly. 43 people on that ship just proved that we are something new. Something outside their experience. Something they cannot predict. Her smile widened. And that means we can win. In the darkness of space, the Silence analyzed and recalculated. For the first time in nearly 1,000,000 years, they faced an equation they could not solve. The final transmission from the steady horizon contained a single sentence, spoken by Captain Grace Liu with her last breath. We are still here. The colony world called Haven's Rest had earned its name through decades of peace. Located far from the political tensions of the core systems, it had become a sanctuary for beings who simply wanted to live quiet lives. Humans and aliens worked side by side in the agricultural districts. Children of different species played together in parks designed to accommodate bodies of every shape. For many residents, Haven's Rest represented everything the galaxy could become. Mayor Daniel Perry stood on the balcony of his modest office, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. He had taken this job 15 years ago because he believed in what the colony represented. He had stayed because he had come to love its people, regardless of how many limbs they possessed or what atmosphere they breathed. The first tremor caught him by surprise. The ground shuddered beneath his feet. gentle at first, then building to something that made the walls crack and the windows shatter. He grabbed the railing as the balcony swayed, watching in horror as buildings across the city began to collapse. Haven's Rest sat on a geologically unstable fault line. Everyone knew this. The original surveyors had warned that seismic activity was possible. But the tremors had always been minor, barely noticeable. No one had expected this. The earthquake lasted 4 minutes. When it finally stopped, Daniel looked out at a city that had been transformed into rubble. Fires burned in the commercial district. Screams echoed from collapsed structures. Emergency sirens wailed from every direction. He moved without thinking, running down the stairs of his damaged building and into the chaos below. His mind processed the situation with the calm clarity that only crisis could bring. The hospital was damaged, but still standing. The emergency services station had partially collapsed. Most of the residential towers were intact, but several had fallen completely. Humans were already gathering in the streets. Daniel recognized faces from his community, neighbors and workers and friends. They moved toward the damaged areas without being told, without waiting for instructions. "Daniel," someone called. He turned to see Nurse Carla Webb running toward him, her medical bag bouncing against her hip. Her face was streaked with dust and her uniform was torn, but her eyes held the same determined focus he saw in every human around him. "The hospital is overwhelmed. We need triage stations throughout the city. I need volunteers." "Take whoever you need," Daniel said. "What else?" The Thashan district took the worst damage. Their buildings were not designed for this kind of stress. There are hundreds trapped. Daniel nodded and began moving toward the Thashan district. Around him, other humans were doing the same thing. No one had organized them. No one had given orders. They simply saw where help was needed and went. The Thashan district was a nightmare of broken structures and crying voices. The insectoid beings were pinned beneath rubble too heavy for their delicate bodies to move. Their calls for help mixed with the groans of settling debris and the crackle of small fires. Daniel reached a collapsed apartment building and began digging with his bare hands. The concrete tore at his skin. Blood mixed with the dust coating his fingers. He did not stop. Could not stop. There were people in there who needed him. Other humans joined him. A young woman named Maria started working beside him without a word. An elderly man named George brought tools from a nearby hardware store that had somehow survived. Within minutes, a full rescue operation had formed, organized by nothing more than shared purpose. They worked for hours. Daniel lost track of time. His muscles burned. His lungs ached from the dust. A deep cut on his arm refused to stop bleeding. None of it mattered. Every time they pulled a survivor from the rubble, every time they heard a voice crying out that they were coming, he found new strength. Carla Webb had set up her triage station in a park near the district center. She worked on patient after patient, her hands steady despite exhaustion that should have dropped her hours ago. Thashan physiology was different from human, requiring different treatments and different approaches. She had studied alien medicine for exactly this reason. "You should rest," one of her alien assistants said, a young Valoran who had volunteered when the crisis began. "You have been working for 36 hours. Carla looked up from the wound she was closing. "There are still patients waiting, but your body cannot sustain this level of activity. Our medical texts say human endurance has limits." "Your medical texts," Carla said with a tired smile, "were not written by someone with patients who needed her." She returned to her work. The Valoran watched her with an expression that mixed admiration with something like fear. Across the galaxy, in the council chambers on Vareth Prime, a different kind of rescue was being remembered. Elder Vashik stood before the assembled representatives, his ancient body supported by a walking frame that hummed with gentle power. He was one of the oldest living Terralians, a survivor of an atrocity that most species preferred to forget. "I was young when the burning of Torith Prime began," he said, his voice cracking with age and emotion. "The Korvac Collective had decided that our world contained resources they wanted. Our people were inconvenient. So they began systematic extermination." The chamber was silent. Many species remembered the burning, though few had done anything to stop it. We had no fleet capable of evacuation. Our calls for help went unanswered. The council at that time determined that intervention would be politically unwise. Vashik's voice hardened. "Millions of my people died while the galaxy watched and did nothing." He paused, gathering himself. Then a human merchant vessel entered our system. The ship was called the Wandering Star. It carried a crew of 14 humans and a cargo hold full of industrial equipment. They were passing through on their way to a trading outpost. They had no obligation to stop. They had no connection to my people. They had nothing to gain and everything to lose. They stopped anyway. When they realized what was happening, they diverted from their course and headed directly for our planet. The captain, a woman named Susan Ford, sent a message to the Korvac fleet ordering them to cease their attack. They laughed at her. One ship against dozens. 14 humans against thousands of soldiers. Vashik's eyes glistened with tears. The Wandering Star landed in the capital city while bombs were still falling. The crew emerged and began loading refugees onto their ship. Children first, then the elderly, then anyone who could reach them. The Korvac sent ground troops to stop them. The humans fought back. 14 humans against trained soldiers. They should have been slaughtered in minutes. Instead, they held their position for 11 hours. They fought with weapons until their ammunition ran out, then with knives, then with their bare hands. 3 of them died. The rest suffered wounds that our doctors said should have been fatal. They saved 8,000 of my people. 8,000 lives that the galaxy had written off. When we asked Captain Ford why she had risked everything for strangers, she looked at me with confusion in her eyes. She did not understand the question. She said only that we needed help, and she was there, so she helped. Vashik turned to face Ambassador Shore, who had been listening in silence. "This is why I do not fear humans, Ambassador. I have seen what your people do with their power. You protect. You rescue. You sacrifice. Not because you must, but because you cannot imagine doing otherwise. The galaxy calls you monsters. I call you guardians." The chamber erupted in argument. Some species agreed with Vashik. Others insisted that human capabilities were too dangerous to allow unchecked. The debate might have continued for hours, but then the tactical displays updated. The silence had reached the outer defense perimeter. 3 Council warships had been destroyed in seconds. The fleet was not slowing down, and a single human exploration vessel had changed course to intercept. High Speaker Zoran stared at the display. "What is that ship doing?" Ambassador Shore checked his communication device and went very still. "The vessel is the Steady Horizon. Captain Grace Liu commanding. She has volunteered to gather intelligence on the enemy fleet." "That is suicide," Zoran said. Shore looked up, his expression unreadable. "Yes, she knows." On the display, the tiny human ship continued forward, heading alone into the darkness where ancient death awaited. The silence that followed Ambassador Shore's words lasted only a moment before chaos erupted. Representatives from 3 different species immediately fled their platforms, their flight instincts triggering at the sight of a human who had somehow bypassed Council security. Others pressed themselves against the backs of their seats, as far from the entrance as they could manage. Lisa Murray watched these reactions with a mixture of sadness and fascination. She had worked with aliens for 15 years. She had friends among them, colleagues she trusted with her life. but she had never seen them afraid like this. She had never understood that their friendliness had always contained an undercurrent of terror. Ambassador Shore, High Speaker Zoran said, his voice carrying forced calm. This session is classified. Your presence here is a violation of Council protocol. Shore walked slowly down the central aisle toward the main podium. Lisa followed 2 steps behind, her eyes scanning the chamber for any sign of hostile action. She found none. The aliens were too frightened to attack. With respect, High Speaker, Shore said, I believe a session discussing whether my species should be imprisoned deserves our input. Unless the Council has decided that humans no longer merit basic diplomatic consideration. Zoran's scales shifted color, a sign of discomfort that Lisa had learned to recognize years ago. This is not a trial. We are simply gathering information, assessing potential risks. Then you will not mind if we stay to hear the evidence. Shore reached the podium and turned to face the assembled representatives. Please, continue. I am curious to learn why the galaxy fears us. Councillor Therix had remained at his secondary podium throughout the commotion. He studied the 2 humans with the careful attention of a scientist examining a new specimen. Ambassador, I mean no disrespect to your species. My research is not an attack. It is an attempt at understanding. Then help me understand as well, Shore replied. I have seen fragments of your evidence. Humans performing feats of strength and endurance, surviving conditions that should have killed them. These things seem remarkable to you. To us, they are simply what we do. That, Therix said softly, is precisely what makes you so frightening. He pressed a control, and the holographic display changed to show a detailed biological diagram. The image depicted a human body, every system highlighted in different colors. May I present Scientist Milox of the Thashan Empire, Therix said. She has dedicated her career to studying human biology. Our findings are the foundation of everything we now understand about your species. A platform near the front of the chamber glided forward, carrying a being that resembled a tall, thin praying mantis with iridescent wings folded against its back. Scientist Milox moved to join Therix at the podium, her compound eyes fixed on Shore and Murray with obvious nervousness. Ambassador, Milox said, her voice surprisingly melodic, I have spent 30 years studying your kind. I have examined your genetic structure, your physiology, your neurochemistry, and I must tell you something that I do not believe any human has ever been told. She gestured at the holographic display, enlarging the image of the human circulatory system. Your blood is poison. The iron-based hemoglobin that carries oxygen through your bodies is toxic to 93% of known species. Direct exposure causes tissue necrosis in most carbon-based life forms. Your species literally bleeds death. Lisa felt Shore stiffen beside her. She understood why. The idea had never occurred to either of them. Milox continued, highlighting the human immune system. Your bodies host trillions of microorganisms that you call gut bacteria. These organisms help you digest food and fight disease. To us, they are plague carriers. A single human kiss could introduce fatal infections to most species. A human sneeze in an enclosed space could sicken hundreds. We did not know this, Shore said quietly. Of course you did not. Milox's tone held no accusation, only wonder. To you, these things are normal. You evolved alongside them. But we did not. To us, humans are walking biological weapons who do not even realize the danger they pose. She changed the display again, showing comparison charts of physical capabilities across dozens of species. Your stamina exceeds any other known organic species by a factor of at least 3. Your healing rate is considered regenerative by our standards. Your ability to function despite injury, despite exhaustion, despite conditions that would incapacitate any other being, this is not normal. It should not be possible. Captain Raymond Brooks had served in the human military for 30 years before retiring to diplomatic service. He had fought in 3 conflicts that the Council pretended had never happened. He had buried friends who died doing things that no rational being should have attempted, until this moment. Standing at the back of the chamber, where he had been waiting in case his ambassador needed protection. He had never understood why those friends had been able to do what they did. Dr. Hannah Cole, Shore said, gesturing for someone to join them. Our xenobiologist. Perhaps she can provide context. Hannah Cole made her way down from the upper levels where she had been observing. She was small for a human, barely reaching Shore's shoulder, with gray streaks in her brown hair that suggested decades of experience. Her eyes held the particular brightness of someone who has dedicated their life to asking questions. I have studied alien biology for most of my career, she said, taking a position beside Melox at the podium. I have always wondered why humans seemed so different from every other species we encountered. Now I think I understand. She turned to face the Council directly. We evolved on a world that is trying to kill us. Earth has predators on every continent, venomous creatures in every environment, diseases that mutate faster than our medicine can adapt, natural disasters that reshape entire regions, temperature extremes that swing from frozen wasteland to burning desert. Our planet has experienced 5 mass extinction events that we know of. Each one killed most life on Earth, but something always survived. Something always adapted and came back stronger. That something, she continued, is us. Humans are the product of 4 billion years of relentless natural selection on a world that tolerates no weakness. Every capability that frightens you, every trait that seems impossible, exists because our ancestors needed it to survive another day. We are not supernatural. We are simply the answer to a very harsh question. Counselor Therix leaned forward. Dr. Cole, are you aware that your homeworld is classified in our databases as a death world? Specifically, a Class 12 death world? Hannah frowned. I was not aware of any such classification system. That is because we do not share it publicly. The scale runs from 1 to 15. Class 1 worlds are garden planets with minimal hazards. Class 15 worlds are considered completely uninhabitable. Therix paused. Before we discovered Earth, no known species had ever evolved on a world rated higher than Class 7. The chamber went silent again. You are telling us, Shore said slowly, that humans evolved on a planet considered nearly uninhabitable by galactic standards. I am telling you, Therix replied, that humans evolved on a planet where no other intelligent species could have survived long enough to achieve civilization. Your world should have killed you. Instead, it made you into something the galaxy has never seen before. Ambassador Shore stood very still for a long moment. Lisa watched his face, seeing the thoughts moving behind his eyes. She knew him well enough to recognize when he was putting pieces together. If we are so dangerous, he said finally, why have we never conquered anyone? Why have we never used these capabilities to dominate or destroy? In the 40 years since first contact, humans have fought exactly 3 conflicts, all defensive. We have colonized worlds that other species considered too harsh to inhabit. We have traded fairly with every civilization willing to deal with us. We have offered aid to species in crisis without asking for anything in return. He spread his hands, a gesture of openness that seemed to make several nearby representatives flinch. If we are the monsters you believe us to be, why have we not acted like monsters? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Then an alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed across the chamber. Every display in the room switched to show the same image, a massive fleet emerging from hyperspace at the edge of Council territory, a fleet that no one recognized. a fleet that seemed to stretch across the stars like a dark tide. High Speaker Zoran's scales went pale. What is that? The answer came from the Council's central computer, its synthetic voice cutting through the chaos with mechanical precision. Archives match confirmed. The approaching fleet belongs to the species designated as the Silence. No diplomatic contact has ever been successfully established. 17 civilizations have been destroyed by this entity. Last known contact was 947,000 years ago. The panic that followed made the earlier fear of humans seem almost quaint. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched upward like a cathedral built for giants. Floating platforms held representatives from 47 spacefaring species, each one positioned according to their civilization's age and influence. Blue light filtered through crystalline walls, casting strange shadows across faces that ranged from almost human to completely alien. The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations in 100 different languages. But one topic dominated every discussion. Humans. High. Speaker Zoran stood at the central podium, his scaled body reflecting the ambient light like polished metal. He belonged to the Kreth Dominion, one of the oldest civilizations in known space, and he had called this emergency session for a reason he had not yet revealed. His 4 eyes scanned the assembled representatives, noting which species had sent their most senior diplomats and which had sent expendable juniors. The patent told him everything. Everyone understood the gravity of this meeting. "We will begin," Zoran announced, his translator converting his native clicks and hisses into the common galactic tongue. "I remind all present that this session has been classified at the highest level. No recording devices are permitted. No communications with outside parties are allowed until we reach a conclusion." On a platform near the back of the chamber, Councillor Therix shifted his elderly body into a more comfortable position. The veteran diplomat had served on the council for over 200 standard years, longer than most species lived. His skin had faded from vibrant purple to a dusty gray, and his movements had grown slow and deliberate. But his mind remained sharp, perhaps sharper than it had ever been. He had spent the last 50 years studying humans. He understood why this meeting had been called. He had been the one to request it. "Honored representatives," Zoran continued, "we gather to discuss a matter that affects every civilization present. 17 formal petitions have been submitted to this council, all requesting the same action." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "These petitions request that the species known as humans be permanently quarantined to their home system." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some representatives nodded in agreement. Others exchanged worried glances. A few remained perfectly still, their alien expressions impossible to read. "Before we consider these petitions," Zoran said, "Councillor Therix will present his findings. He has compiled evidence from across our territories. I warn you now that some of this evidence is disturbing." Therix rose slowly from his seat and made his way to a secondary podium. A holographic display flickered to life before him, showing the blue and green sphere of Earth rotating in the darkness of space. "Thank you, High Speaker," Therix said, his voice carrying the weight of age and authority. "I will begin with a simple question. How many of you have actually met a human?" Perhaps a third of the representatives raised their various appendages in acknowledgement. "And how many of you found that experience unsettling in ways you could not explain?" Nearly all of them kept their appendages raised. Therix nodded slowly. "That reaction is not coincidental. Your instincts recognized something that your conscious minds could not process. Humans are dangerous. Not dangerous in the way a warrior species is dangerous, or in the way a technologically advanced species is dangerous. They are dangerous in a way that defies our understanding of biological limitations." He pressed a control, and the holographic display changed to show footage from a colony world. The image was grainy, clearly captured by a surveillance system not designed for high-quality recording. This footage comes from the mining colony on Vareth 7, Therix explained. 80 months ago, a structural collapse trapped several workers underground. Among them was a human female and her young offspring. The footage showed rubble and dust, emergency lights flickering in the darkness. A small figure could be seen pinned beneath a fallen beam, crying out in pain and fear. Then a larger figure appeared, moving through the debris toward the child. The being you see weighs approximately 300 kilograms, Therix said. Our engineering calculations indicate that moving it would require the strength of at least 4 adult Kreth or a mechanical lifting device. On the screen, the human woman reached the beam. She crouched, gripped the metal with her bare hands, and lifted. Her face contorted with effort. Tendons stood out on her neck. But the beam rose, centimeter by centimeter, until the child could crawl free. The chamber had gone completely silent. The human female suffered severe spinal damage and internal bleeding from this effort, Therix continued. She required extensive medical treatment. When asked how she accomplished this feat, she could not explain it. She said only that her child needed her. He changed the footage again. This time, the display showed a battlefield, smoke and fire obscuring much of the view. This footage comes from the border conflict between the Thashan Empire and the Korvac Collective. A small human military unit was stationed as neutral observers. When the fighting spread to their position, they should have retreated. Instead, they held their ground for 9 days against forces that outnumbered them 30-1. The footage showed human soldiers moving through chaos with a calm determination that seemed almost mechanical. One soldier took a wound that should have been immediately fatal, a projectile through the chest that would have killed any Valoran or Thashan instantly. The human looked down at the wound, pressed a hand against it, and continued fighting for another 6 hours before finally collapsing. 9 days, Therix repeated, without adequate food, water, or medical supplies. In atmospheric conditions that our scientists classify as marginally toxic. By every calculation we can make, they should have died within the first 12 hours. They did not. When reinforcements finally arrived, 8 of the 12 humans were still alive and still fighting. More footage followed. Humans surviving in vacuum for minutes that should have been seconds. Humans healing from injuries that should have been permanent. Humans adapting to alien environments within a single generation. Their bodies adjusting to different gravity, different air, different food in ways that took other species thousands of years to achieve. We have studied their biology extensively, Therix said. Their blood contains chemicals that are toxic to most other species. Their immune systems can adapt to nearly any pathogen. Their skeletal structure can repair itself even from catastrophic damage. Their brain chemistry allows them to ignore pain and fear in moments of crisis. And perhaps most disturbing of all, they possess something our scientists have termed persistence hunting capability. He paused, letting that phrase hang in the air. Humans do not need to be faster than their prey. They do not need to be stronger. They simply need to keep following. They can maintain pursuit for hours, days, even weeks if necessary. Their prey eventually collapses from exhaustion. The humans do not. Zoran leaned forward. And you believe this makes them a threat to the Council? I believe, Therix said slowly, that we have welcomed a species into our community without understanding what they truly are. Humans are not conquerors by nature. They are not aggressive in the way the Korvac are aggressive. But they are something far more dangerous. They are survivors. And in my experience, the survivors are the ones who inherit the universe. The chamber erupted in anxious discussion. Representatives from species that bordered human space looked particularly distressed. Others who had never encountered humans began, demanding more information. None of them noticed the door at the back of the chamber sliding open. None of them saw the 2 figures who entered, their movements silent and purposeful. Ambassador Kevin Shore had heard rumors of this meeting. His attach, Lisa Murray, had confirmed them through channels that the council did not know she possessed. Shore stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching the assembled aliens debate whether his species should be locked away forever. His face showed no anger, no fear, no particular emotion at all. He simply waited until the room fell silent, until every alien eye had turned to look at him. "I believe," he said quietly, "but you forgot to invite us."